The Littlejohn and Foss readings and the Craig reading both describe in detail the 7 traditions of communication theory. However, they address those traditions in a different order. I'll follow the order of Craig in this case. Craig begins his description of the 7 traditions with the rhetorical tradition. He defines the rhetorical tradition as a collaborative art of addressing and guiding decision and judgment, usually public judgment that cannot be decided by force or expertise. Rhetorical inquiry, more commonly known as the study of public communication, is one of the few areas of research that is still actively informed by its own traditions. Craig also points out that rhetoric was the primary source of ideas about communication prior to the 19th century. The history of rhetoric can be traced back to ancient Greece and the famous philosophers, the rhetoricians like Isocrates, Plato, and Aristotle. And in a classic sense, we can break down this rhetorical tradition into several components. The art of inventing ideas, arranging those ideas, conveying those ideas in a certain style and delivery, and how we retain and reacquire the information that's conveyed through discourse, otherwise known as rhetoric. Next, Craig addresses the semiotic tradition, or communicating through signs. And in the semiotic tradition, which is very closely related to linguistics, communication scholars and practitioners focus on the study of signs and sign processes and how they might mediate our understanding and interpretation of communication messages. Examples of signs might be, let's say, metaphors, symbolism, or the use of symbols to represent our words and make meaning, and of course these symbols, these metaphors, and other forms of symbolic expression can be influenced by various factors: culture, age, religion, even social status and social groups. So as Craig points out, semiotics is a useful way to focus attention on how people convey meanings and develop a vocabulary based on symbols. Next, Craig describes the phenomenological tradition. And to understand this tradition, we simply need to focus on the word phenomenological, or phenomenon. Phenomenology is the understanding of communication as we experience phenomena in our lives. So here, borrowing from Pelota and McCunis in a 1990 publication, Craig explains that phenomenology is an exposition of the communication process as it takes place in our experience. And as Littlejohn and Foss explain, those phenomena could be objects, they could be events, situations that we experience in life, conditions, etc. And as Craig points out, the phenomenological tradition consists of 3 elements. First, we view authentic communication or dialogue as direct experience, and that experience helps us to define the world around us. Second, the meaning that we assign to a phenomenon is directly related to the relevance of that object, that event, that situation in our life. For instance, if you are invited to attend a seminar on the American Psychological Association style of writing, APA, and you are not a graduate student and had no plans to attend graduate school, I'm confident that you would assign little relevance to the seminar. However, as a graduate student, APA takes on new significance, new relevance, and therefore a different meaning for you. And third, a point that Littlejohn and Foss explain very clearly in their chapter, language is the vehicle by which we express meaning. As Littlejohn and Foss say, communication, in other words, is the vehicle by which meaning is assigned to experience. Next, Craig explains the cybernetic tradition, or a tradition of communication as information processing. And I think the key word here is systems. Cybernetics, as we read in Littlejohn and Foss, is the tradition associated with communication through complex systems, communication from one part of a system to another, and how those parts interact or influence the transmission of information along pathways defines communication.